Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Self-Started Show, episode 15. And with me, I have a very special guest today, Brandon Shrair. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it. For everyone who doesn't know, Brandon is a friend of mine that works together with me at Jumpcut. He's actually my manager. We both kind of have a lot of similarities in our backgrounds and our paths and what we're trying to do individually. But Brandon particularly has a very interesting story now that he's running his own business in his post-Jumpcut careers. So, Brandon, let's just jump right into it. Why don't you just introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah, totally. Just like my backstory.
Yeah, let them know your backstory.
Cool. So my big thing was that basically all the way back in I think it was high school, like almost 10 years ago, I found a copy of the 4 Hour Workweek. Like I stumbled on it randomly in like a Barnes and Noble, back when there was like bookstores, and I read it and it just completely like shattered my reality. Thinking about like how you're supposed to approach life in terms of like, everyone goes to school, you go to college, you get a degree, you try to get a really good career. And literally reading that book, it didn't even necessarily teach me that much, in terms of like, tactically what to actually change or like, specifically what to do, but it just completely changed my mindset on everything. It made me realize that like, I needed to work for myself. And to a certain extent, it also kind of gave me like the fear of like, thinking, all right, I'm going to wake up when I'm 50 years old and like working in a cubicle and just want to like blow my brains out. And so that is kind of what sparked everything. And it sent me on a path of like, all right, what's the easiest path or what's the smartest path, to work for yourself. And the conclusion that I came to, and I think this still holds true today, is online marketing and like online business. So I went down that whole path, and started reading every marketing book that I could find, reading every course I could get my hands on, and kind of studying what other people were doing, and I spent a lot of years doing, honestly probably the wrong stuff and just like had the wrong mindset on like how to make money, because I kind of went through that really like noob phase of like chasing after every single like get rich quick kind of idea. And after going through that, a couple years went by, I kind of matured a little bit. In college I was trying, I tried doing things like my own affiliate sites and like starting blogs and stuff like that, and then I got a little bit more serious and started approaching things from the perspective of like, all right, how do you actually make a business? So for a little while, I was running a thing called viral blog content, where companies would basically hire me to write blog posts for them. Back when like that was like a really big thing, like doing content marketing.
Around like 2015, 2016, like or even earlier.
Yeah, that would have been around 2015 or so.
Gotcha.
And actually, I had some success there, but I still wasn't really mature in like a personal sense, but also like a professional sense of like knowing how to start a business, knowing how to run it, and truly grow it. And so that kind of, that basically led me to start thinking, all right, I know I want to work for myself, but I need to learn like a real skill set. I need to learn, all of this stuff, for real. And, that's actually when I was in college at the time. So it was like, I was at a business school, like, George Washington, or I was studying business. But I felt like it was literally teaching me nothing. And like, I wasn't actually learning, how to actually sell something, how to actually start a business. When I kind of thought that the classes would be entrepreneurship, not here's how to here's how to go to an interview and like speak really well. And I literally to this day I distinctly remember, at one of those classes they spent like 20 minutes telling us that you had to put your name tag on, I think it was like the left side, because they were like, then when you reach out with your hand, like it will like
directly see their name.
Yeah.
My God.
So they'll like remember your name.
And it's so tactical, right?
Yeah, I think they made us dress up in a suit too for that. So we were all in suits pretending to be at a networking event, like practicing shaking people's hands.
So for that class, like what was the actual like class name, like title, like what's that supposed to be?
I think it was.
Is that actually like entrepreneurship as a class?
No. But basically that's what I thought the school was. The class was probably something like, consulting 101 or something like that, where they're going to teach you like how to get a consulting job or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
But it was stuff like that that made me realize that like while school was really fun, I was having a great time social life. I just started realizing that it was just a gigantic waste of time. When it came to like actually learning marketing and learning skills to be successful. And so at the time I was following like a YouTube channel that I was a big fan of. Those guys went on to create JumpCut, but basically I realized that they were doing, marketing and they were kind of innovating in like the online business space more than really anyone else I saw at the time. I was kind of like impressed by like how they were approaching everything.
Yeah, especially for the typical YouTuber, it's not, and this is like a problem that you still talk about, that so many influencers with gigantic followings just do not know how to monetize it. But the people that started JumpCut, the simple pickup guys, they really nailed it, and they kind of built their model on that. So what you're saying.
So that's honestly what really blew my mind. Like this had to be 8 years ago or something like that. What I noticed was that, most YouTubers, even though they had a huge audience, had no idea how to sell a product, how to create a product, or how to like monetize their audience. And these guys were doing like huge product launches. They were selling digital products and clearly were like incredibly successful. And so, one day I saw in one of their videos that they were hiring for a marketing position. And, I kind of just applied for it almost out of like just the great perhaps, thinking that I would never get it because I was a college student, with no real work experience and all that stuff. But I kind of just demonstrated, what I was working on myself for my own business and stuff like that. Ended up, being offered the position, and I thought it was like the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. And then I had to have that really awkward conversation with my parents. That was like, hey guys, I'm actually dropping out of school.
Now, did you tell them that after you accepted the job offer? Or when was that in the process?
Okay, so was definitely a little bit sneaky with it. I literally did not think that I was going to get the job. I thought there was like a 0% chance, even though I thought if I got it, it would be a great opportunity. So I waited because, how lame would that be if I called my parents and told them I'm applying for a job and I'm going to drop out of school, and then I didn't get the job.
That's probably like, out of all the options, that probably would have been the worst.
Yeah, so it was like a 3-month process. It was like really intense. I don't know if that was kind of similar for you, where it was like
all right. So for me, it was actually similarly, like mine was even more of a fluke, to be honest. I sent in an email and didn't expect to get any job offer. I wasn't trying to get a job.
Oh, true.
So it wasn't like I had like zero expectations, absolutely no expectations. So, but basically the COO of the company saw my email and was like, "Oh, we want to consider you for a job," which was for customer service. And I have, similar to you, I was only 19, 20 at the time. No real work experience. 1 year of college under my belt. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. And like, there's like, the great perhaps that, like you said, if I get it, then that would be great. Like move to LA, like, and work with these guys that I've been following for so many years. Like that would be super cool. For me, the process was maybe like, I would say like 4 weeks. I'm actually surprised to hear that yours was like 3 months, but
I think it was about 3 months. Because I remember when I applied, I was 19. But then when I started working there, I was 20. So there was like
there's a gap there.
But yeah, it was a pretty intense process. And then, I waited to be given the offer before I called my parents and told them. I think I accepted it after telling them, but it didn't really matter. Honestly, I was kind of thinking to myself, like,
at that point, you're like, same here. I actually just told them as soon after I accepted it. I was like, actually, did I actually, honestly, it might have been very similar to what you did, where I got the offer, and then I'm like, I told Peter, I'm like, I'm gonna think about it. Knowing well that like I'm gonna say yes, but I just gotta figure out what my parents say. It's in that situation. I honestly, maybe it's a little sneaky to not tell your parents until then, but I feel like I didn't want them. I don't know about you, but I didn't want them to interfere with process in any
Yeah,
type of way.
so that was kind of the issue. I was also trying to like manage their emotions to a certain extent, because that to them was like a pretty big deal. Like,
Yeah.
I got this like emotional email from my grandma that was like, please don't do this.
Oh my God.
You're making a mistake. You can always do this in the future. Love you, Gaga. But yeah, that's what I was worried about, was just like causing undue like arguments and stress, because it's kind of a big deal, you know.
It is. I feel like, especially because you're the younger son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, so you know, I ended up moving across the country, dropping out, which was kind of a wild experience, but it turned out exactly as I'd hoped. It turned out to be basically college for business, because it's like you go there and you work for this like high growth startup with really smart people, really ambitious people, you know, where everyone is kind of like an expert in their own domain, whether it's creative, you know, like video editing, or marketing or whatever. Everyone was kind of really passionate about what they were working on. So to me, that's like literally the best possible place you could learn for something like this, because it's like you know, you get to see what's working in the real world instead of like swimming around in the world of like theory of like online courses and books and blogs and all that stuff. There's just something really magical about actually working on projects and even stuff like that you couldn't learn on your own, because it's like you couldn't spend $100,000 on Facebook ads to learn, you know, paid ads on your own. But if you work somewhere that's really smart, they're basically paying you to learn, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. That was basically my perspective when I went into JumpCut. I'm like, this is like, you're getting paid to learn these things that are way more directly applicable to whatever skills you want to build, whatever career you want to pursue, than college ever would be. I mean, I learned things like obviously marketing under you, and operations, customer service, even content writing. All that stuff, like, it's not something that a college course would teach. Like, maybe they'll teach you theory, but in terms of practicality and being able to, like you said, play with the actual tools that you use to generate leads, write actual copy, test it out, get the results, iterate. You just don't get that experience unless you're directly working in like that type of environment.
Totally.
Yeah, and we'll go more into like the JumpCut era later on. But so tell everyone what you're doing now.
Yeah, so as of the past like 8 months or so, now working for myself, basically I took the same skill set that I learned, you know, working for the past 4 or 5 years, and started a company that had a similar business model, but in a different market, because it just seemed like the best way to apply those skills. So right now it's like I have a business partner who's like the face of the company, and it's kind of like a Tony Robbins-esque self-help dating advice information company, where we have online courses and coaching programs, you know, a pretty big YouTube following, and basically we help people improve their dating life through, it's honestly a lot of just like self-improvement and personal development, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and right now they're, I mean, you're in the middle of like different launches, like really, I know that you're big on like testing different ideas that before you're hesitant to really test out, but now that like there's kind of like the speed going on in terms of your execution, and I feel it seems like right now you're really getting a new groove going into 2020.
Yeah, totally. Honestly, that was like one of the biggest things that I kind of picked up from JumpCut almost. It was just like speed beats everything else, you know, and you start noticing this when you hang out with people that are actually really crushing it in business, is that like they're just moving, you know, at light speed. Like, you know, if they want to figure out if a product's going to work, they're not going to talk about it. They're probably not even going to survey people. They're going to literally start selling it. Or they're going to start, you know, in some way just testing it, like today. You know, they're going to find a way to literally do it today. Whereas for most people, they would think about it for 3 months or make a plan for it. While these guys have already tested 17 different things.
So, okay, yeah. So that's actually a important point. Like, what would you say what's like the benefit of doing that? Particularly, like, what do you get out of testing vigorously versus like, all right, let's try to plan for the perfect move to execute?
Yeah, totally. I think the wild thing is that just what you start realizing is that like the theory doesn't hold up in real life. So like literally the only way to get a good result, the only way to actually figure something out, is to test it in the real world and just get a real response from a customer, or just an audience or whatever. And as far as like growing a business goes, it's just something we've noticed is that like the faster we move, the more the business grows. So it's like, all right, how do we create? It's basically asking yourself, how do we launch this in a week when you think that it's supposed to take a month? Or how do we test an idea like right now, like this hour, instead of like, oh, we'll put down a meeting and we'll do it a week from now. And it's like, I don't even think that we are as good as we need to be. We're a lot better than we used to be, and we're getting better. But some people are just absolutely nuts about this. It's like they come up with an idea. They're like, hey, you know what? We should try an angle for selling this nutrition program, in this new way. Someone just randomly, they're like hanging out, comes up with an idea. And then those guys go home and literally they throw ads up, that night and start getting a response on Facebook ads. And it's just kind of wild how quickly you can like test new ideas and make moves, if you're willing to just kind of hustle.
Gotcha. Now, would the Brandon of 10 years ago ever consider something like that? Like, where was your mindset at when you first started getting into this whole idea of, I want to be in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point. So I used to be completely the opposite, right? And so I used to have this mindset of like, what is the like quickest, easiest way that I can make money? So everything was that idea of like get rich quick. Everything was that idea of I want to work the least amount of time possible, and somehow just magically, make things work.
Gotcha. Would you say like super short, like a short-term mindset, thinking that that's actually going to work long-term?
Yeah, and so it's a combination of a lot of different things, but I just didn't have like perspective back then, right? And so, we've talked about this before, but like literally it resulted in me like losing thousands of dollars on like scams for things that I at the time just didn't even realize were scams, because I kept thinking to myself that like these type of things exist. So like an example is like you'd be on a marketing forum and they would have a section for like joint ventures where people would like put up their business ideas and be like, hey, I'm launching this website, I need a copywriter, do you want to like create the copy for this website and we'll split the profits 50-50, stuff like that. And a couple times I literally just like really stupidly like sent people thousands of dollars for projects that literally make no sense. And then, you would be talking to them on Skype for like a week and like, no one's making any money. And then, they just stop talking to you or something like that. There was honestly a bunch of projects like that. And it, to a certain extent, it was a good thing, because it kind of was like a kick in the ass to approach business in like a smart way, right? And just accept that like...
smart as in not the way that you originally thought, like smart as in like doing it the right way.
Yeah, and a big thing was like, for like the big thing on the mindset side was initially accepting that like it's just hard work. Yeah. Instead of avoiding hard work, it's like accept it and almost enjoy the hard work, because it's like a journey, right? Similar to like fitness. You can either choose to enjoy going to the gym and lifting, or you can choose to hate it. Yeah. But there's really no difference, right? Like the people who enjoy it, they're still lifting the same weights. They're just kind of saying, this is fun, I'm improving myself. I like the pain almost. It's like enjoying the pain of building something, whether it's a business or like yourself or whatever. But yeah, and then the speed thing just kind of compounds on that. It's like once you accept that working hard is necessary and you should honestly just enjoy working hard and like, building something for 10 years from now, instead of trying to build something that, in a weekend will make you money or whatever. Is like the mindsets of how you then approach business, right? And that's where like the speed thing comes in, because like a lot of people spend time, the kind of the cliche of like getting a logo, having a website, doing all of these things primarily for your identity because you want to show all your friends, hey, look, I'm a cool CEO, or hey, look, I'm a cool business owner, or whatever.
Yeah, and that's something that we, in a lot of the copy that we did at JumpCut, we were like telling people like, yeah, it doesn't matter what your channel name is or your, like these, or what your logo looks like. It's really the core product, the core content is what matters. And I think that goes back to what you said. There are a lot of people like the vanity aspects that are kind of like these quick, like super quick things to do that really don't move the needle at all. But it helps you avoid the real work but at the same time, you may feel like you're actually doing something.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point. That's like exactly what it is. We kind of realized there's only like two things that matter in the business, at least at that point in time, or where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much improving our products and selling them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like we focus all of our effort on how do we acquire customers more cheaply, and how do we get more results for our customers in our products.
Yeah.
And that's like literally it. So everything we do in the company, all of the OKRs, all of the projects we're working on, are all based around that. And what's funny is like, it almost feels weird at first because you're like, shouldn't we have a website? We're a business. And then if you ask yourself, is creating a brand website going to make us, is it going to improve the results we get for customers or help us get customers? And if the answer is that that's not the number one priority, for one of those two things, then you just don't do it. So we literally didn't have like a website for the first like 3 years of this business, and did hundreds of thousands in revenue without having like an official website. If you went to like the brandname.com, because we were just sending people to sales pages on like ClickFunnels, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know that if you search up the name, it's like the top results, like the YouTube page, and then I think other pages are probably like the landing pages and whatnot. But yeah, so basically you guys have gotten this far without a website for a long time. And I think a lot of people might think that's kind of crazy because of their typical understanding of what a business should, like that seems like a foundation of a business. But clearly, as we've seen here, like that's not really what's important at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it also depends on like what you're doing. Like you could have a business where that does make sense.
Yeah.
But it's just like
there's nuance to it.
Yeah, and it's like accepting, it's like doing the things that actually matter, not the things that you want to matter, right?
That's a good point. I think a lot of the times people do push their own, like I don't know if emotion is the right word, but like their own like bias towards what they want to work versus what actually works. So that's a really good point. Speaking of that, when you started the viral blog business back in college, what was your mindset back then compared to like the get rich quick mindset versus now?
Yeah, so I think you can kind of think of it in like 3 stages. So the viral blog content literally came about after I got like scammed a bunch of times and like wasted a bunch of months of work doing stupid stuff that didn't actually work. And so that came about because I was like, all right, so what would like a real businessman do, right? How would they approach creating a cash flow company or something just to get started? And I was like, okay, they would probably sell a service because it's like you can charge a lot of money, you can have a couple clients. And so I sort of came up with that idea out of the mindset of let's just do the hard thing, right? Because to me, and I think to everyone, it's a really like unsexy business, right? It's really boring. Like the idea of like we sell blog articles to small business owners.
Yeah, like on the surface, definitely not the like Bitcoin or like one of those type of companies.
Not like a social media influencer,
exactly,
right? Like not cool.
You're not a YouTuber by any means.
Yeah, but what was crazy, and I didn't know this at the time, but like there was a market for it, and business owners at the time, it was kind of a big thing, was like putting content on your site for SEO. And so I literally didn't even run ads. I would just like post on Reddit and post on a couple different forums where like I had a link in some of the posts that said what I do. And I literally had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 clients at a time paying me like $1,000 a month for like a few blog posts. And it was just this like ridiculous situation that looking back what I should have done is I should have hired people to write the articles for me,
And
and then scaled
scale.
it, because it's like, Jesus, this was such a good opportunity at the time.
Yeah, so like zero CPA for the guys that you got, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
probably should have, but but I mean, you can only connect the dots looking back, but so
Yeah.
well, that's interesting. So and you, like you mentioned, that's one of the main ways that you were able to show JumpCut that, hey, like, I'm not just like any other guy here. Did you so when you applied for JumpCut, did you think that, like, oh, this is like actually a lot of leverage, or you're kind of just like, it might work, it might not work?
Yeah, I thought that was my only leverage. I thought, like, the only reason they would hire me is because
of that,
they were impressed by
Yeah.
the thing I was trying to build.
Yeah.
So that's actually sort of an interesting point about, like, the self-started thing in general. There literally, like, I completely believe that there's literally never been a better time in the history of, like, humanity where you can learn a skill set that generates value. Something in the realm of, like, online business or marketing or anything even attached to that. Literally, there's never been a better time where you can teach yourself a valuable skill set, and then leverage it to either get a job or start your own business. Just because of the wealth of stuff that's available online, but also even, like, the network that's available online, where, like, I've met people through Twitter that run, like, huge businesses and have given me advice that, is worth outrageous amounts of money. And it's funny because it's good and bad, right? It's like there's this huge opportunity, and it's good because it's merit based and it's performance based, meaning the better you are, the easier it is to, like, get a job or get results from a business. Like, but it's also hard, right? Because it's extremely competitive, and you kind of just need to push yourself to learn and implement and then grow. But I don't know, to me that's, like, really motivational, and it's really cool because, to me, never before in history has there been this opportunity where if you're willing to go down that path, the like, resources are there for you. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't really do this 100 years ago. You couldn't, like, go online, learn the skills to start a business, do it, and then get rewarded entirely based on merit.
And having that ability to showcase it, and not just like I mean, with the internet, obviously for you had this whole profile, like, portfolio of works that you could show JumpCut, and a lot of people, like, now, like, if you post your work, like, that you have a much better chance of like, showing, rather than just saying that, oh, on a resume, this is what I can do. Actually, on that note, because at JumpCut you were a hiring manager for a lot of the marketing roles, and you've been through tons of resumes. I mean, I've helped you go through resumes, and so you've really seen what a good applicant versus a not good applicant does. And would you say, like what would you say, like, your perspective is on, like, how people should apply for jobs and how they actually do, and, like, why it doesn't work?
Yeah. So it's actually a really interesting question. I think, like, the one caveat on this answer is that I think it's unique a little bit because we were a startup. So we had a different culture and a different, like, process than I think a big company would.
Which is like a very fair point, because there's a lot of bureaucracy with big companies, and the way they do it's definitely not, it doesn't always translate to how we did it. Which is important to point out. But
and also, I mean, even if you're applying for jobs, it's like, that's something to think about too. It's it's a lot easier to get hired based on merit for, like, a small company where they haven't been kind of, like, invaded by, like,
the corporates,
the sort of political nature of, like, a corporation, where everyone knows the stories of, like, nepotism and, like, people getting hired or promoted or whatever for ridiculous reasons that have nothing to do with performance.
Absolutely.
But as far as, like, for myself, I think for me it was just, like, the extreme version of that. Like, I honestly did not care at all about people's degrees, because we were hiring people for a marketing position where you're literally going to be judged on how effective is your sales copy, or how effective are your emails, or how good are you at managing a project and getting it done, right? Or whatever, how smart are you, right? Whatever those qualities are, that's all I was looking for. So a couple times people mentioned they had started a little online business of some sort. You know, maybe they started a website, maybe they created a course that they were selling, or a YouTube channel, whatever it is. Even if they weren't successful, that to me was like a reason to get on the phone with them, right? So like every single one of those people, I was like, all right, I got to interview them, because they might be the type of person that has like kind of like the spark, you know, to make all of this happen, right? Because like, even though, you know, there's all these resources available, not everyone will actually take advantage of them, right? So we were kind of looking for someone who, in theory, could take off on their own, right? And in the future, could run a huge business, right? So it's like literally the ideal person is someone that you think you're kind of grabbing ahead of the curve before they've really made it, so that, you know, sure, they can join the company, they'll learn a lot, they'll get a ton of value out of working there. But you're taking advantage of someone who
like they have that high potential.
Who has massive potential, and you can help them like realize that potential. So that's really what I was looking for, was like some level of demonstrated performance or past results. So little things like, you know, if they had said, oh, I went to this conference, or I read these books, or I, you know, went through all this effort. Like if a couple times people told me that they had like handwritten out sales letters, right? Which is something that gets mentioned in like old copywriting books. And it's something that's like painful to do. It's like not fun. So that's like a demonstration that like they're willing to go way beyond a normal person, right? So that's another thing where it's like, all right, I got to talk to this person and sort of see, you know, they might be like the special kind of person that could be mentored into crushing it. That, you know, this is all assuming that they don't just have crazy past results, right? Because that's the easiest one. Is it's like someone comes on, someone applies and says, hey, I literally worked for one of your competitors, and like we've made like $10 million like in terms of like marketing funnels, you know, and stuff that I managed. And then it's like, as long as the person is a culture fit, you can hire them, right? Because it's like we're focused on performance. We're not focused on anything that's like a vanity metric. Right? So like, who cares if they didn't get an MBA from Harvard? You're obviously going to choose the person that you think is going to drive the most results.
I'm sure same goes for like the years of experience. Obviously you're more interested in like the actual projects and the results, rather than like how long it took them to like get to a certain level or something like that. Yeah,
it's just like there's this weird conventional wisdom that like you should join a fraternity and you should like spend a lot of time donating your time to like nonprofits so you can put it on your resume, right? And there's nothing wrong with doing either of those things.
Coming from someone who's been in a frat.
Oh, and done plenty of when I was younger, we used to always go to charities and like do all that stuff. But there's nothing wrong with that, but it has no bearing on getting hired. Like that's why it always seemed like really funny advice. Maybe it matters, right? For like one of those huge corporations where like you're literally in just an alternate universe, right? Because it's like no one cares about performance. It's all political. You know, if you can like become friends with your boss, like you probably are not going to be the one who's laid off, even if you deserve it, right?
I think that's so true. Like I remember Jordan Peterson talking about how in any like given giant corporation, like half the workforce is responsible for like 10% of the actual output. So people obviously aren't like they're not optimizing for maximum performance. There's a lot of there's a lot of like I said, nepotism and just like politics behind like why people get hired. And on that note, like now that you mentioned that people think that things like charities and like frats like matter to your job, I feel like that's just like the mentality that people carry on for how they apply to like school. Because those are like the type of things where it's not just about your GPA or your SAT scores. There's like, oh, your extracurricular activities, your volunteering, where I think that mindset, people don't really kick it, especially when you're staying in the school environment, I think, where it just kind of reinforces it.
I think that's actually the biggest issue. Is that like you literally get these mindsets like ingrained in your mind, you know, from childhood to young adulthood, because that stuff is true for school.
Path,
like for school and for applying to college, it literally it almost matters more than like your actual GPA. At this point in time, it seems like all they care about is just like
quotas. Like quotas and whatnot.
But that's probably the biggest thing you have to kind of break out of, because it's like a toxic mindset to be focused on like vanity metrics, right? And like that will literally drive you into the ground if you try to apply that like anywhere else in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on. So at JumpCut, you started as a junior copywriter. Like you didn't start off looking at people's resumes and trying to hire more marketing people. So talk about your ascending from junior copywriter to where you ended up as director of marketing.
Yeah. I think to a certain extent, I'm a little bit nuts in that I'm like super passionate about this marketing stuff. Like, I've just spent years like engrossed in it because I find it really cool. Like there's something just really interesting to me about like influence and the psychology behind it. And so I think a big thing was that, I kind of kept learning. Like even after I joined, we had this thing for a little while called Learning Day, where like every weekend we would get together, whoever wanted to, and we would just learn whatever you wanted for like on a Saturday or something where you're not being paid anything, you're just doing it for fun. And so like I would go there and bring these like books or like massive marketing courses that I would like print out that were like these crazy PDFs or whatever. I think that what that did was it just gave me a lot of ideas that I could then take and like really quickly test in the business. And so I think I had like a really good mixture of like theory and also real world experience and putting them together. And I was literally able to just like take crazy new ideas from a course or a book or whatever, and apply it to the business. And what ended up happening is that like, this is kind of oversimplifying it, but like things worked really well. And the reality is that they weren't really my ideas that were unique. It was just like hard work. It was just like you see an idea and then you test it. And it was a lot of just like long nights of doing that kind of stuff.
Wait, hold on before you.
Yep.
Start this again. There you
Cool.
go. Yeah, continue.
And so it was just like a lot of long nights of working and implementing, and just in the early years it was literally just like hustling super hard. Like all I did was think about the business, whether it was like concretely working on like copy and like writing stuff for the business, or outside of it I would go home at night and like study more marketing stuff, and still be thinking about the business. And then on the weekend it was like studying more stuff. And I think that environment just produced a lot of results because it was just like you're putting your all into it. Mm-hmm. And so what ended up happening is the marketing, went super well. The company started growing. We literally went from like $0 when I joined because we didn't even have a product back then. Like when I joined, like there was no courses. There wasn't
even a JumpCut, was there?
There was a JumpCut Studios.
Yeah.
In name alone. So like technically that's the company that I, was hired.
Yeah.
And I think back then they were trying to like start multiple YouTube channels. It was going to be like a media company or something.
Yeah.
So like literally the company that it is today did not exist back then. So, and there's like no money coming in other than what they were, funding it with, like their personal money. And yeah, we just kept having these giant jumps. Things succeeded. And so I think I kind of moved up again just because, at least, back then the environment was very merit based. It was very performance based. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it was kind of obvious. It's like, if you make $1 million from product launch, for a company that sells courses and is very marketing heavy, you can attribute a lot of that value there to marketing. And so I think that's kind of why I got recognized. Obviously it wasn't just me. It wasn't like,
yeah.
I'm not trying to be like selfish in saying it that way. But I think that's really why I rose up, because like, again, it's just like one of those merit things, and
yeah. Especially with marketing, because it's for what JumpCut was for the majority of the time that we worked there. It as an info product, basically an info product company, a lot of the measurable KPIs was how well the launches did. And as working on the marketing team, you can obviously say like, oh, we directly influence that. So as opposed to like the content or a different department. So I'm sure, that obviously plays into how easy it is to recognize the merit aspect of it.
I think that's again kind of just like a really big point for people if they're getting started in their career or they are interested in doing a similar thing. It's like it might not be as appealing or fun if you're someone who's like really creative to go into like a very performance driven role, but I think that's really your only option. Like if your goal is to like break free of like 9-to-5 jobs and work for yourself, at some point in time you have to shift into a performance role, because for your own business that's what it's going to be. You're like the fantasy of being an artist and hiring someone to like sell your shit is just like it's a fantasy. You know what I mean? You're always going to end up having to be the main salesman or marketer or whatever for whatever you try to do, and so like to me that's really the only option, because it's like if you're a video editor, maybe you could get creative and figure out a way to show your value, but it's really tough, right? It's really hard to show.
It's super subjective too.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, and it's not really, like, it's a really case by case on like what the projects you're working on, like it, whereas with marketing, like there, like you can show the direct transferability. It might not be in the same niche, but you can show that I have this funnel that I built for this company. I can apply the same principles and the same tactics and just adjust it to your company. Yeah,
you know what? I think that's what it is. I think the point I'm trying to make is that like it's you need to be able to quantify your value both for a career and also for your own business. And so there's very few options you have for things you can do that is easily quantifiable. Yeah. Right? So it's like if you're an audio technician, how do you quantify that, right? And then the result is that if you can quantify...
Shots fired to Jamie from
good thing you don't have a Jamie.
Yeah, true. Sorry. To future Jamie, you already know that you're not a performance-based job.
No, but like you know what I mean. Like in theory, you could get creative, and I'm sure there's exceptions to this rule.
It's like, just not as obvious.
Yeah, but it's like the reality is, if you have results, if you have numbers, no one can disagree with those, right?
Yeah.
So like they basically have to hire you for whatever amount of money you want, because you have literal data to back up all your claims, as opposed to normally, it's like I can go hire a different video editor and there's 10,000 of them in Hollywood. Like, what are you going to do?
Maybe like to play devil's advocate, maybe in that situation where we're talking about video editors, you give them all the same project, see how fast they do it. But even then there's like a qualitative aspect of it that you can't just be like, oh, there's like a metric to...
Well, so that's kind of my point, though, right? It's like you can quantify a good versus bad video editor. It's hard for them to ask or demand to be paid their actual worth, right? So I'm not saying like they're not valuable. It's just really tough for them to actually get paid what they're worth, because they don't have a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
By lacking the
like the direct metric. Yeah. Like if there was like a market equilibrium for their like value, like it's not, you can't like just staple a number onto it directly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Shit, what are we talking about?
I think you were asking about like the ascension.
So the ascension.
It was just kind of natural. It was like I kept improving, and to me, it's like I view marketing, and I view it kind of as like a passion where I want to get better at it forever. Right.
Yeah. And luckily, that's one of those skills that really directly works well with business.
Yeah. So I think it was kind of just the answers. It was just kind of natural after a while, because it's like I'm gonna keep getting better, and kind of viewing, the skill as like almost like an athlete, right? So if someone's like a professional basketball player, and they're in your company, against you, it's like unless you're gonna be as crazy as them, and take 10,000 free throw shots.
Not a sports guy.
Yeah.
for everyone wondering, he's just a marketing guy.
Need a different analogy. Yeah. But yeah, unless you're gonna work your ass off, like they're gonna beat you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I think it'll be interesting to dive into this. So, what was your lifestyle? What was your lifestyle like when you first started at JumpCut, and versus around when you were like kind of at the peak?
What do you mean?
Because I remember,
like in what respect?
When you first started as a copywriter, like you were like barely making your like rent, and like but you were like living in like Hollywood.
Yeah.
At the but obviously like your lifestyle then versus later in jump cut changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, when I started, I because I moved across the country, I wanted to live really close to jump cut because the one thing everyone says about Los Angeles is that you don't want to have a commute. You don't want to drive. Getting stuck in traffic sucks.
Yeah.
So I picked a place that was like walking distance. But Hollywood, turns out to be very expensive.
Yeah.
And so I literally had like a studio apartment, and for the first year that I was working there, I was literally like losing money to work there. Like there was more money going out than was coming in part probably because of personal finance issues on that can be blamed on me, but also because it's kind of tough to kind of live by yourself. I wanted to live by myself, so I like didn't have a roommate.
Yeah.
But it's sort of tough to live by yourself in Hollywood on like an entry level salary. And I didn't have a lot of bargaining power back then because it was like I'm the 19-year-old college dropout.
Yeah, like the youngest guy. Like, yeah, you can't be like, yeah, listen, my experience dictates that I should be paying more.
Funny story is I tried to negotiate, and their response was effectively no, period, emailed to me.
You did
not
it
really.
by email?
I think I did it by email.
My
yeah.
God. I feel like that's like the first mistake.
I took a day to like think about it, and then I emailed them a response. But I'm joking with the no response, but that's effectively what the answer was. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, cool. I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, that must have been an awkward Monday.
No, I mean it was fine, but what was hilarious was that like I asked for
what was your mindset like going into that? Like how long into working there did you decide to go for that?
What do you mean?
Like when did you decide to like was that like directly after you started working?
No. This was like when they gave me the offer. They gave me the offer, and I was like, all right, time to negotiate.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, no, because I was under the assumption that you were doing this after you started working. Like as soon after you started working.
No.
Okay, that clears it up.
Yeah.
So, and I understand why you said that you have no like leverage there in that situation. Yeah. Damn, that's ballsy, man. I feel like you're. I guess.
No. So what's funny is like I was like a kid, so I had never worked a real job before, other than like a summer job kind of thing. Yeah. And so I thought for some weird reason everyone negotiates. I was like, you're probably stupid not to negotiate.
Yeah.
Might as well. They're not going to reject you, right? So I asked for some outrageous amount of equity. Like looking back, it was like obscene. And so it actually makes sense why they said no. I totally had no idea what I was doing.
But so you just wanted to just say that you tried, or
I think
like in your
I
own
might
head.
have been in a fake it till you make it mindset at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you were playing with house money, to be honest.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just funny.
It's hilarious. So after you started working there, like obviously you move up in roles. Obviously, did you move to a different apartment?
Yeah, I mean, after a couple of years, after probably a year or two, I moved to a bigger apartment.
Yeah.
Oh, you asked about lifestyle. I literally totally forgot.
Yeah. Lifestyle.
Honestly, though, I don't have a very good answer for that. Because it's just gonna sound like me bragging about flying business class. But yeah, lifestyle got a lot better because I was able, I moved up at the company. I moved into increasingly performance-driven roles, and was able to be paid relative to
how much
performance.
You're producing, yeah.
And then at the same time, this is honestly just like the benefit of learning marketing and business stuff. People always want your help, and so over time you meet more people, you make friends, whatever. Everyone starts wanting help. Everyone wants your advice on a new sales letter they're doing, or they want you to help them write copy for an email sequence or something. And so people just started offering me a lot of like consulting deals without me even reaching out for them or without me even trying to get them.
Yeah.
And so, as sort of a natural side income just sort of appeared, directly correlated with like skill set increasing, and your network increasing. And then eventually somewhere near the end, before I left, that's when I also had the side income of like the current business, where we started working on it together. But yeah, so I mean, lifestyle went up dramatically really quick, like almost like exponentially. And I legitimately attribute that to like the marketing thing. It's almost like a stock market thing where if you are being paid in some type of a performance or results based way, it's like the stock market in that it doesn't really lie. Like it might lie for a little bit, like a stock's price might be artificially low for some weird reason. Like there might have been a scandal with the CEO, so the stock drops because people are like worried or whatever, right? But the underlying company itself is still just as valuable, right? So then a couple weeks later, it goes back up, right? And the reverse is also kind of true, right? And so I look at it like you might not see the results instantly, but if you're like investing in the right places, like you're investing in yourself, you're getting way better every single day at your skill set, whatever that is, or working on your business, right? And you're like making smart decisions. You might not see the results right now, but then eventually it's just like, boom, you have like a step function up, and just out of nowhere, you're like, holy shit, your lifestyle is so much better. And the reality is that it didn't get better that one day. You were putting in the work for that for the previous 6 years. It's one of those things.
Absolutely. So we're like looking back, were you like surprised at how comparing where you started to where you ended up? Or were you kind of like, all right, this makes sense based on the work that I've done?
So honestly, that actually kind of reminds me. I wish I could like go back in time and get into my brain when I was in college, or the first year that I was working, because I would love to know what I actually expected. Like I don't really remember where I thought I would be. You tell yourself, everyone always has like fantasies, right, about like where they think they're going to be, like, oh, I'm going to have a 100-foot yacht or whatever. But who knows how seriously you actually believe that dream you have, right? It's like for everyone who thinks about like having a Lamborghini, I would say 99% of people don't legitimately think that they're going to have it. You know what I mean? It's like they know that they're literally role-playing a fantasy in their mind, and they have no shot at getting that actual thing. So they're just doing it for like,
it's like some mental belief. Masturbation.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't totally remember, but I think, I don't know about the timeline. I don't know if I thought, I think I always thought that I would be running a business and be pretty successful. But I definitely didn't think that it was going to happen in this way.
In that path.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who does? Like, I don't think that's anyone's plan A.
Yeah. There's been a lot of days over the past 5 years or so where I've literally like called a friend or something and had a conversation that effectively was, holy shit, how is this happening right now? Like, there's a little bit of the like imposter syndrome thing where you're like, how the fuck did they hire me? Like, these people are nuts. Like, I can't believe they're trusting me with this much responsibility, Dude,
I feel like I had those moments when, and I'm sure you had the same moments. Like, you just feel like when we had those retreats, or like we went to Vegas as a company,
exactly.
And, like those type of moments where you're literally playing craps in the the Palazzo, and you're just like, or fucking Encore, whatever it is, and you're just like, wow, this all came just because I fucking applied to this random job that I honestly I might not have had any business being part of.
Yeah, and for me it was like, because I saw it in a YouTube video. Like, what if I clicked a different YouTube video?
Yeah, it's like
didn't watch that one.
Yeah, the odds of you encountering something like that is like super low.
Yeah, like I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I applied because at the end of one of their videos they were like, we're looking for these people.
Damn, so you had to watch, like, imagine if you just clicked away.
I got bored or something.
Yeah.
Throwback to the time when we rented a private island.
Oh yeah.
For a marketing video shoot. That was one of those times.
That was insane.
That was one of those moments.
Oh shit, car's full. That's alright. I got my phone. But yeah, fucking renting the yacht, and
the yacht was interesting.
Was interesting. The island,
dude, that was definitely a moment. So like standing on the roof of the yacht, definitely had a moment where I was like, what the fuck? Like, I can't believe they actually did this. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, I kind of said it as like a, like, we'll see how they respond.
Dude, you were the brainchild of that initiative, and I'm honestly, to this day, I still think like That's crazy. Like yeah, that's just crazy.
Dude, I think it was the fact that there was like some momentum behind it. It was like little things that I asked for, were granted, and so I started just asking for bigger and bigger things.
Yeah.
Because why not? And also because people really wanted certainty. Like people were like, tell us what house you're looking for this video that we're gonna shoot. And in the beginning when I was like, honestly, I'm not sure. This one I could see being good. This one could be good too. I don't know. When I was kind of indecisive, they kind of just got pissed at me. And someone else made the decision. So what I realized was like, they just want someone who's decisive. I don't necessarily need to be correct. Not everyone's always gonna be correct, but it's better to be confident and decisive than not.
Yeah.
So when someone's like, should we rent a private island for this video shoot? The answer is absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. Now that's actually interesting. Like we're and this kind of ties into like psychology, but like, was there any sort of convincing that had to be done there, or were you kind of just at that point where like we trust Brandon's intuition on this one?
Yeah, it was a little bit weird because you know what it was? A big piece of it was that things were working. Like things were going super well. The company was growing faster than I think anyone had imagined or expected. Or at least that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I thought we would do well, but then like there was a couple. We basically for like a 4-year period, we basically grew exponentially. Like not really, but if you look at like a graph of growth, it was like 0, and then like I don't know 500,000. Then it was like 1 million. Then it was like 10 million, and it was just damn, that's growing really quickly. So I think because things were going super well, maybe decisions were made a little bit more loosely than they should have.
Interesting. I always find
I still stand behind those decisions though. Like the yacht one went really well. Mm-hmm. Like those videos turned out great.
That's actually an interesting thing about like KPIs on like how do you quantify whether or not that was worth.
Yeah. You know what the issue was? This might be off topic, but the issue with those shoots was not, in my opinion, the expense of having a really cool thing in the background, the yacht or the island. The issue with it was that we stopped relying as much on copy, and we stopped putting as much of an emphasis on the most important thing. So that honestly, it kind of swings back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where it's like vanity versus what's important.
Yeah.
Right. And like the most important thing was always like, what's the script we're using? Like what are the words on the page? And also what's the product?
Yeah,
and
what's the offer?
We started focusing like so much of our time, money, and effort on everything else, and we kind of, I think that was the issue.
Yeah, and we're not going to get into the politics of JumpCut on this podcast, but I definitely saw that as well. Like you said, it goes back to what we were talking about, the whole vanity versus the core, like the essentials of what makes a...
Yeah. It's just like the numbers don't care, right?
Yeah.
Like the customers don't care either. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care about your subjective opinions. They're either going to buy or not, and you're either going to make the sale or not,
Yeah, exactly. So, actually, a little earlier you mentioned that when you started to get results for JumpCut and you kind of built your reputation within the company, people started asking your advice for like in terms of consulting for their sales pages, their funnels, etc. And that's been true until, even up to this day. Would you say like that's something, was that like an unintended benefit of...
Yeah.
So have you capitalized on any of that?
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, that was like people outside the company were asking me. I just meant like my skill set was going up in the company, So, I'll leave open, in a couple hours a month, like an amount that I can do on the weekends, so it doesn't interfere with like my current business. Mm-hmm. I'll leave open a couple hours so that I can do that. Honestly, almost more for fun than anything else. And help people with copy and sort of advise them on like business strategy. In part because it actually kind of benefits me, in a huge way too, right? There's sort of the unintended benefit of doing consulting in that you get to look at what's working for other businesses. You get to see how other business owners are thinking. And it's one of those things where it's like, teaching is almost like one of the best ways to actually learn something. Yeah. And it's just cool. It's like if you want to surround yourself with other like guys who are into business, then consulting is kind of a cool way to add some people to your network too. They hit you up, you give them advice, they love it, and then you're kind of friends. Like I actually kind of love having, obviously like regular real friends are great too, but I love having those kind of business / friend connections where maybe they pay you for advice on consulting stuff, but you can also hang out, you can also talk, and you end up with like I'm about to go to a conference in Vegas for like a marketing thing, right? And it's for a business purpose. It's to learn marketing, but all the people there that I know are kind of like business friends, right? So we can go and talk about business and grow our business and work, right? And put in legitimate work that like isn't fun, and then also have fun at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And so that to me, that's kind of what I like about doing like a little bit of consulting. It's just there's so many like unintended benefits like other than money.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think a lot of people, they do look for that direct benefit, and obviously it's things like that you can't predict exactly when that's going to happen, but it's always good to get in bed with the right people.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it literally just happens. Like again, it's one of those things. It's like the market thing. It's like if you are legitimately good at some form of marketing, some form of business, people will literally tell you that. Like I heard this from someone, but I kind of like it. It's like when people start telling you that you're good at something, then that's when you really know you're good. Yeah. And when that happens, what that means is their friends. If you're in a business network of people in any way, shape, or form, at some point in time, their friend is going to say, hey, do you know a good graphic designer? Do you know a good copywriter? Do you know a guy who's good at this? And they're going to refer them to you because they're like, I know that this guy is the best, it's almost natural, right? And that's kind of what's cool, because it's like, again, it's like merit-based. It's like, wouldn't you prefer to be rewarded based on skills rather than anything else?
Yeah, and I think that actually reminds me of like that's like the equivalent of like in American Idol when an actual judge tells you that you suck at singing versus like your friends that just like versus you just thinking that you're like really good when you sing in the shower.
Yeah,
and that's kind of like that where you're getting that external validation, and it's kind of like the marketplace is telling you, hey, you're actually good, and that's what you can really. That's when you have actually something to actually leverage.
Yeah,
and obviously it's worked great for you, and I'm sure that's something that only just snowballs more as your network grows. I want to bring it back to now your current company. How did you get started, and what's been the progression since you first got it started?
Yeah, that's cool. So it got started because I ran into this guy who's now my business partner in one of those like private kind of like marketer groups, and very similar to how I got scammed like 10 years ago. I made a post where I was like, hey, I have this skill set. I'm a marketing guy. This is what I know how to do. I'm looking for someone who could be the face of the business, because I don't want to be, I wanted to be behind the camera, right? And because I wanted to do like an info business, that means that there's a lot of media, there's a lot of production. So I wanted to find someone who's like, looks good on camera and can speak well, and also has the personality and desire to do that side of the business, the content. Found someone, I spoke to him on Skype or whatever, and we just realized that we might be a good fit. And so he happened to be a guy that was doing coaching. At the time, all he was doing was like phone coaching, and like he had no online presence at all. He had a lot of credentials and authority. Like he had been on TV, he had been interviewed on all of these like ABC News. He had been on all these like famous things, right? So he had all these really cool credentials, which is always great for like information marketing. But there was no business yet. He would host these free events in Illinois, and try to sell people on like hiring him as almost like a personal coach. And so, the first step we took was like, all right, how do we scale this, online? So we started doing like webinars, and we started running ads on Facebook. He started a YouTube channel, which did not take off for like years, but the ads worked. So he does like dating advice, and so he had like a partnership with Match.com for a while, where we would literally host webinars for the clients, and then we could promote our stuff. And so we would like offer people the coaching or whatever, where and he would sell them over the phone. And so the business for like the first iteration was just selling his time, basically, right? Creating funnels online to sell his time. And then it became, all right, how do we scale this further? And it was like, all right, let's create a group coaching program so that we can scale his time. And so he was selling people into a program where he would give help to a group of people at a time rather than one-on-one over the phone, which we thought was smart. That kind of worked. But again, we hit like a ceiling, right? So at each of these steps, we kind of hit a ceiling of either how much money we could make or how stressful it was, right? Because like there's this issue when you're selling someone's time, even if you're doing it in a scalable way, which is like burnout. So like, it was almost a bad thing that I was able to drive so many clients, because he was like, he was doing all the sales calls himself. So he was burning out from that. He was doing all of the content for the actual like delivery of the program. So he's burning out from that. Right. And so we hit another wall, and we were like, all right, how do we now scale up further, but optimize for like, not lifestyle, but optimize for like stress. So you're not selling yourself, you're not stressing out.
So it's a little bit more sustainable than what it previously was.
Yeah. And so the next iteration, which was like maybe after a year or so, right? Each of these phases was probably like a year long.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we're growing our skills and like getting smarter and making mistakes, on little things, but figuring shit out along the way.
And obviously, just so everyone knows that you weren't full time on for a lot of these years. You weren't, or some of these years you weren't full time.
Yeah, I wasn't. Here's the thing, though. I wasn't really full time on this business until I left JumpCut. Like I was doing.
Yeah.
It's like I worked on it on the weekends, but the reality is like you can't give your all to something.
Well, what do you mean by that?
I just noticed that not having a job and having my full attention to invest in this business resulted in so much faster growth than anything before it. So like honestly, we've accomplished more in the past 8 months than we could have in 10 years of trying to do it as a side hustle. It actually kind of changed my perspective of like side hustles a lot, because I really think that you need to just go all in, assuming you have the runway or whatever. I think you need to go all in, because it's like so different, just being fully immersed in it. And I don't know, we've just grown so much quicker. So so like the second thing that we kind of iterated on was like, all right, how do we not sell his time? So we switched to courses that were just like video programs that you buy and are like automated. So it doesn't take any of his time, it doesn't take sales calls. We would just sell them through like a website. And that sort of brought us to where we are today. And the new final iteration was excuse me, the new final iteration was, all right, courses are going really well, it's automated, how do we take this up another notch? And it's like, well, one of the things that people want is like personalized coaching, but we can't do that through my business partner, because we don't want to stress them out, all that stuff. How do you do that in a truly scalable way, right? Instead of, you've got coaching, then you've got group coaching. What's even more scalable than that? Well, it's like coaching that is delivered by employees instead of ourselves. And so now what we've done is we've hired coaches, we've hired salesmen to basically scale and automate what formerly was a manual process, right? And we're just trying to figure out if that works right now. But that's sort of the evolution, was like always kind of, growing and optimizing for increasingly, big things that can scale.
Yeah, and it seems like whenever you hit a plateau, it wasn't like, all right, we're just gonna accept this. Like it's always about iterating and breaking that ceiling, so to speak. And I also like that you use the word automating when we're talking about human capital.
Yep.
I think a lot of people don't really view it that way. They think of automation as like, oh, you're just using some software to like auto respond your emails or something like that. But human capital is actually like a great like an untapped way to quote unquote scale, that I think a lot of people don't realize is a viable way of doing it. Like, I'm sure it's like it comes with a set of challenges, but I'm sure at the same time, we've talked about this before. Like, you're kind of figuring out how to make it a more feasible thing to do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things you can do. Like, it's kind of like the boring side of the business stuff. Like, everything is a process. Everything has a method. Everything has a checklist, right? Everything is like documented.
Yeah.
That can help for a lot of things. Like, you can create a sales process so that I can hand it to you more or less, right? And you can now sell, right? Instead of it being a skill set that only one person possesses. Same thing goes for coaching, but I actually think that what you said about like human capital, I think that's like one of the biggest advantages that like a lot of people don't take advantage of, because it does have a lot of headaches. But to me, it's like the way I think about a lot of things now is like, how can we have a moat, right? So like, if our competitors are unwilling to do coaching, then we should do it, because we're gonna do something that has a moat. It has something like, it gives us an advantage that they'll never do because it's such a big headache, right? So like, I almost want to do things now that are painful, right? I almost want to take on projects or like build things into the business that are really hard to do and really annoying, because other people are less likely to do them, right? And that means that we're a little bit more secure.
Interesting. So you'd rather get that competitive edge rather than just be like, all right, let's just make it easier, but at the same time we're giving up market share, basically.
Yeah, I think this might just be me, but like my goal long term is like keep growing this. Like, it's almost like an Amazon thing. It's like once you hit a certain point, you're not even doing it for money, right? Like, obviously the first thing I wanted was, all right, I got to be self-sustaining. I need to pay for my rent, right? But I think once you get above that, and even a bit above that, it's not really about money. It's like you want to build the biggest thing, just because it's like, I think that for me, like, I kind of view business as like a proxy for self-improvement, right? It's like the only way you can grow your business is if you improve as a person, right? Like, someone who's like getting drunk all the time, or isn't working out ever and has horrible health and nutrition, isn't going to be able to grow a business, right? So these things are all kind of linked. So it's like the desire to grow the business huge just means you're trying to improve yourself.
That's
right?
a good point. I've never seen like an obese, like, Fortune 500.
You just
CEO.
can't really, like, your body literally can't take it, right?
Yeah.
And so what that ends up doing is like, it makes you want to do the hard work. It makes you want to do the stuff that like that like a lifestyle entrepreneur would avoid, right? And so one example of that is like, no one really has phone sales teams anymore, at least not for like small businesses, or you don't hear it talked about a lot in like internet marketing. And that actually kind of makes it attractive to me, right? Because it's like, here is a mechanism that works really well that you can use to sell high ticket items really effectively. And the only barrier to entry is effort, like hiring people, training them, managing them. So it's like, I definitely want to do that.
Gotcha. That's cool. So, would you say right now you guys are beyond the point of sustainability? Or right around there?
Yeah, I think as of the past like 2 months or so, I mean, we're profitable. It's just not huge numbers yet, but we've been profitable for the past few months.
Cool.
And I mean, we're still like investing a lot in like the growth of the company, like, because we're hiring people, because we've got like a little office, and yeah, we're not like trying to be super lean right now. Like, we want to be, but like there are ways that we're spending that we don't need to be. So I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now.
Cool. Well, this has been really good. I think this is one of the most valuable podcasts that we'll probably have.
Awesome.
So really appreciate you coming on, Brandon. Is there, for anyone that wants to reach out to Brandon for anything, like where can they find you?
The best is just brandonshrair.com.
Brandon.
You can like get my email there. Yeah, you can like link it if you want.
Yeah, I'll throw that in the description.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, sounds
Appreciate
good.
It.
It was fun.
Yeah. Thanks for everyone for watching. We are signing out. Peace.